It was June 18th, a bright Saturday afternoon, and I was standing at the entrance of my wedding venue, trying not to cry before the ceremony even started. Not because I was nervous. Not because I doubted marrying the love of my life. I was fighting back tears because I had just overheard my own family calling me a gold digger. I still remember the exact words. Let's be honest, my older sister Lauren whispered, not realizing I was standing behind the partially open door. Emily got lucky. No way a guy like Daniel would marry her if he wasn't loaded. Someone laughed. Then my aunt added, give it a year. She's marrying his bank account, not him. The room erupted in quiet chuckles. I froze. My wedding dress suddenly felt heavier, my chest tightened, and for a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. These were the people who were supposed to love me, support me, celebrate with me. Instead, they were mocking me on the happiest day of my life. What hurt most wasn't that strangers believed I was after money. It was that my own family did. I quietly stepped away before they saw me. I didn't want a confrontation, not on my wedding day, at least that's what I thought, because what happened later changed everything. Looking back now, that was the moment everything started. I met Daniel 3 years earlier. At the time, I was working two jobs, one at a bookstore during the day, one at a restaurant during the evenings. My apartment was tiny, my car barely ran, and my savings account was honestly embarrassing. Daniel walked into the bookstore one rainy afternoon looking for a gift for his grandmother. He was polite, funny, awkward in a charming way, and completely different from anyone I had ever met. What I didn't know then was that he came from an extremely wealthy family. He never mentioned it, not once. Our first dates were simple. Coffee walks in the park, cheap diners, mow nights at home. Months passed before I even realized how much money he actually had. And even then, it wasn't because he told me. It was because I accidentally found out. I remember driving to what I thought was his apartment. Instead, I ended up at a massive waterfront property. I genuinely thought I had the wrong address. Then Daniel walked out smiling, holding two grocery bags. I stared at him. What is this place? He looked embarrassed. My house. I laughed, then realized he wasn't joking. I thought that was shocking. I was wrong. The reaction from my family was even worse. At first, they pretended to be happy. Then the comments started. Small ones, subtle ones. You sure moved up in the world. Must be nice dating rich. I wish I could find a millionaire. Every joke carried a little poison. Every compliment felt fake. The closer Daniel and I became, the more obvious it got. They didn't think I loved him. They thought I had won some kind of lottery, and they couldn't stand it. Then something happened that changed everything. 6 months before the wedding, my father asked me to dinner, just the two of us. I thought he wanted to spend time together. Instead, he spent most of the evening asking questions about Daniel's finances. How much did he make? How many properties did he own? What investments did he have? At first, I laughed it off. Then I realized he was serious. Dad, why are you asking this? He shrugged. Just trying to understand your future. But his eyes told a different story. A few weeks later, Lauren started asking for favors, expensive favors. She wanted Daniel to invest in her boyfriend's business. Then she wanted help paying off debt. Then she wanted introductions to people she thought could make her rich. When I refused, her attitude changed overnight. Suddenly I was selfish. Suddenly I thought I was better than everyone else. The accusations became constant, and somehow every conversation came back to money. I wish I had known what was coming next. 3 months before the wedding, Daniel and I hosted a family dinner. It was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it became one of the most uncomfortable nights of my life. Halfway through dessert, my uncle raised a glass. Here's to Emily, he announced. Everyone smiled, then he added, the smartest gold digger in the family. The table exploded with laughter, except me and Daniel. Silence settled over the room. I felt my face burn. My hands started shaking, but before I could say anything, Daniel calmly asked a question. What exactly makes her a gold digger? Nobody answered. My uncle shrugged. You know what I mean. No, Daniel said. Actually, I don't. The room became painfully quiet. My uncle shifted in his seat. Come on, it's a joke. Daniel looked directly at him. Jokes are supposed to be funny. Nobody laughed after that. The dinner ended early. On the drive home, I cried. Daniel held my hand the entire way. I'm sorry, I whispered. For what? My family. He shook his head. You have nothing to apologize for. But I couldn't stop feeling embarrassed. I thought things would improve. Instead, they got worse. A month before the wedding, I discovered something that left me speechless. Lauren had been telling relatives that Daniel was paying for our entire wedding. According to her story, I was contributing nothing. People believed it. Even relatives who barely knew me. The truth? Daniel and I were splitting the costs equally. Actually, I had insisted on it. I wanted our marriage to start as a partnership, not a transaction. But nobody cared about the truth. The lie was more entertaining, and lies spread faster, especially when jealousy was involved. I confronted Lauren. She didn't even deny it. You can't blame people for assuming. Assuming what? That you're marrying rich. I stared at her. I love him. She rolled her eyes. Sure, that one word hurt more than I expected because it told me something important. Nothing I said would ever change her mind. She had already decided who I was. Then the wedding day arrived, and everything exploded. The ceremony itself was beautiful. For 30 minutes, none of the drama mattered. I saw Daniel waiting at the altar. He saw me, and the rest of the world disappeared. I truly believed the worst was behind us. I couldn't have been more wrong, because the reception was where my family made their biggest mistake, and they had no idea Daniel had been paying attention to every single thing they said. What happened next shocked everyone in that room, including me. The reception hall was full of laughter, music, and the kind of happiness people spend years hoping to experience. For a little while, I managed to forget everything. I danced with Daniel. I hugged folk friends. I smiled for photographs. I told myself I wasn't going to let anyone ruin this day. Then I noticed Lauren standing near one of the tables with several relatives gathered around her. At first, I ignored it, but as I walked closer, I heard my name. Then I heard Daniel's, and my stomach dropped. Lauren wasn't done. Trust me, she said confidently. Emily hit the jackpot. She'll never have to work another day in her life. Several relatives laughed. One of my cousins added, honestly, if I found a rich guy like Daniel, I'd marry him too. More laughter. I stopped walking. The familiar feeling of humiliation washed over me again. The worst part wasn't the jokes. It was how certain they all sounded, as if the last 3 years of my relationship had never happened, as if my entire life could be reduced to a bank account that didn't even belong to me. I quietly turned away before they saw me. I didn't want another argument, not today, but someone else had heard every word. Daniel. And unlike me, he wasn't willing to stay silent anymore. I had no idea what he was about to do. A few minutes later, the DJ announced the speeches, the room settled down, guests found their seats. Champagne glasses were raised, my father gave a short speech, a few friends shared funny stories, everything seemed normal. Then Daniel stood up. The room immediately grew quiet. Everyone expected a typical groom's speech, a thank you message, a romantic story, maybe a few jokes. That's what I expected too. Instead, Daniel placed his glass on the table and looked around the room. His expression was calm, but there was something different in his eyes, something determined. Looking back now, that was the moment everything changed. I want to thank everyone for being here today, he began. The room smiled, then he continued. But before I do that, there's something I need to address. The smiles started fading. I felt my heart begin to race. Daniel looked directly at my family, not angrily, not emotionally, just directly. For the last 3 years, I've listened to people call my wife a gold digger. The room instantly fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I felt every eye in the room turn toward us. My family looked stunned. Daniel continued. At first, I ignored it. Nobody dared interrupt him. I assumed people would eventually get to know Emily the way I know her. His voice remained steady, but they didn't. I saw Lauren shifting uncomfortably in her chair. My uncle stared at the floor. My aunt suddenly became fascinated by her drink. Daniel wasn't finished. In fact, some people became even more convinced. The tension in the room became unbearable. Then something happened that nobody expected. Daniel pulled a folded envelope from inside his jacket. I stared at him. I had no idea what was inside, neither did anyone else. My wife doesn't know I'm doing this. Now even I was confused. Daniel unfolded several papers. Then he looked directly at Lauren. I think it's time everyone learned something. Lauren's face immediately turned pale, and suddenly I knew. He knew something, something important, something she didn't want anyone to know. What happened next left the entire room speechless. About 6 months earlier, Daniel had received an email. At first, he thought it was spam, but it wasn't. It was from someone connected to Lauren's boyfriend's failed business venture. Attached were messages, galamsa.uansons, and records showing something disturbing. After I refused to convince Daniel to invest money into the business, Lauren had started telling people a completely different story. According to her version, I was controlling Daniel, manipulating him, preventing him from helping family. She had spent months portraying herself as a victim, but that wasn't the worst part. Daniel held up the papers. Several people in this room were told that Emily convinced me not to help Lauren because she wanted all my money for herself. Gasps spread through the room. My eyes widened. I had never heard that accusation before. Daniel nodded. That's right. Lauren looked horrified. Daniel, no. His voice wasn't loud, but it stopped her immediately. You've had months to talk. She fell silent. Daniel turned toward the guests. Would anyone like to know what actually happened? Nobody answered. Nobody needed to. Everyone was listening. Every single person. Daniel continued. Lauren asked me for $50,000. The room erupted with shocked murmurs. My father looked stunned. Several relatives exchanged confused looks. Daniel waited for silence, then continued. When I declined, she became angry. Lauren's face turned bright red, and after I declined, she began telling people that Emily was greedy. The room became quiet again. Painfully quiet, I looked at Lauren. For the first time all day, she couldn't meet my eyes, but Daniel still wasn't done. I thought that was the worst part. I was wrong because he revealed something else, something nobody saw coming. A few months earlier, several family members had approached him privately, not to congratulate him, not to welcome him, to ask for money. Large amounts of money. Some wanted investments, others wanted loans. One relative had even asked him to purchase a vehicle. Every request came with the same assumption, that because he had money, he should share it. Daniel slowly scanned the room. Then he said the words nobody expected. The only person who has never asked me for a single dollar is Emily. The room froze. I felt tears filling my eyes. Daniel smiled at me, a genuine smile. Then he looked back at everyone else. Not once. His voice softened. Do you know what Emily asked me for when we got engaged? Nobody answered. She asked me not to spend too much on the ring. Several guests actually laughed, not because it was funny, because they suddenly realized how wrong they had been. Daniel shook his head. She insisted on paying half of our wedding expenses. More surprised faces. She still works. More silence. She still saves. More silence. And she still argues with me whenever I try to spoil her. A few guests smiled, then Daniel delivered the sentence that changed everything. So if there's a gold digger in this room, it's certainly not my wife. The impact was immediate. People began looking around, looking at Lauren. looking at my uncle, looking at the relatives who had spent years making jokes. Suddenly, nobody wanted eye contact, nobody wanted attention. For the first time, they were the uncomfortable ones. Not me, them. And honestly, it felt incredible. Then something happened that changed everything for my family. My father stood up. I expected him to defend Lauren, to make excuses. Instead, he looked devastated. He turned toward me, then toward Daniel, and quietly said, "I owe both of you an apology." The room became still again. My father rarely admitted mistakes. Almost never, yet there he was. Doing exactly that, he looked at me. I should have trusted my daughter. I felt tears rolling down my cheeks, because those were words I had needed to hear for years, not just on my wedding day. For years, one by one. Other relatives began apologizing too. Some seemed sincere. Others seemed embarrassed. A few remained silent. And honestly, I didn't care anymore, because something inside me had already changed. I no longer needed their approval. I no longer needed them to believe me. The truth had finally spoken for itself. Lauren didn't stay much longer. Neither did my uncle. They left before the reception ended. Without another joke, without another comment, without another accusation, and that wasn't even the end of it. Over the following months, the stories continued spreading through the family. Only now, people knew the truth. The same relatives who once called me a gold digger started learning who had really been chasing money all along. Relationships changed. Some became stronger, others disappeared completely. And honestly, that was fine. Not everyone deserves a permanent place in your life, especially people who only see your value through their own jealousy. About a year later, Daniel and I hosted a small family gathering. The atmosphere felt completely different, peaceful, respectful, comfortable. At one point, one of my younger cousins pulled me aside. "I used to believe what everyone said about you." I smiled. She looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry." I hugged her because, unlike the others, she was honest, and honesty deserves grace. That night, after everyone left, Daniel and I sat together on our back porch. The same way we had hundreds of times before, I asked him something I had been wondering since our wedding. "Why did you wait until then?" He smiled, "Because I knew they wouldn't hear it from you." I laughed. "Probably true." Then he squeezed my hand. "But they would hear it from me." The stars were visible overhead. The air was quiet, and for the first time in years, I felt something I never thought my family would give me: peace. Not because they finally approved of me, not because they finally respected me, but because I finally understood that my worth was never theirs to decide. They spent years trying to make me feel small, trying to convince everyone that I was something I wasn't, but in the end, their lies exposed them instead. And as I sat beside the man who knew exactly who I was from the beginning, I realized something important. They called me a gold digger at my wedding, but when the truth finally came out, they were the ones left digging themselves out of the hole they had created. And that was the day I stopped being their victim.